Okay, so this video is most likely going to cause a lot of problems and disagreements in the comments, but I want you all to please remember that this list, like everything else I do, is completely subjective. Nothing I say is or should be taken as fact. This is just my opinion on where I think the Admiral scale and why. Also, I will be including both Garp and Sengoku since they were Vice Admiral and Fleet Admiral respectively, and I'll also be using both of them with their prime selves as well. I will also be talking about the pre-time skip admirals, so pre-time skip Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu. And with that being said, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoy my content and want to see more from me. And without further ado, let's get started with the rankings. Now for numbers 11, 10, and 9, I have pre-time skip Kizaru, Aokiji, and Akainu. I actually have Aokiji and Akainu as interchangeable, and I'll explain why. Let's talk about Kizaru first though, since I do have him in last place. The main reason pre-time skip Kizaru is last on this list is just because he doesn't really have many showings during the pre-time skip. The times we did see him do something was in Sabaody Archipelago, where he fought against the Supernovas, but that isn't really impressive since they aren't that strong compared to the Admirals, at least not during the pre-time skip. I'm also not even sure that they can defeat any of the warlords aside from Luffy during the time, but that's a different topic I'm not going to get into. Anyways, Kizaru then fights against Rayleigh, who is stated to still have his prime strength, although his stamina was very bad. Kizaru went completely even with this Rayleigh, and pretty much would have had to wait for his stamina to run out in order to beat him, which isn't really that impressive. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Rayleigh is weak, he's insanely strong. I'm just saying the fact that Kizaru stalemates him and had to wait for his stamina to run out doesn't make him seem that impressive compared to Aokiji. What does make him impressive is that he was able to hold down Whitebeard's Naginata with just his foot, and he was able to pierce Whitebeard with one of his light beams. The problem with this though is that this is after Whitebeard suffered a heart attack right before this happened, and as Marco explained, ever since Whitebeard has been off his medications, he's been declining rapidly in strength. Meaning Whitebeard when he entered the war was still somewhere around 100%, but as the war went on, he was slowly losing his strength, and his illness was getting worse. Whitebeard, while also on his medication, was also stated to be the world's strongest man, since when he's on them, it's heavily reducing the effects of his illness, allowing him more usage of his strength and haki. Also, I want to say this too so I don't forget, and also for anyone else to not forget, but the Admirals and the Marines themselves were not at full power during Marineford. They were actually holding back as to not destroy the place. So the pre-time skip Kizaru, Aokiji, and Akainu I'm talking about, although they were nerfed during this time, should still be more powerful than any time we could have or have seen them beforehand, especially since Rayleigh states that when in a heated battle, one's haki grows stronger, and I'm pretty sure after Marineford, Kizaru definitely got stronger, but not as strong as Aokiji or Akainu. Also, Kizaru does fight against Marco at Marineford, and he isn't really doing that well against them until Marco gets distracted and placed in sea stone cuffs. So Marco is definitely around Kizaru's level during this time. Next, I'm going to be explaining the ways you can either have Aokiji or Akainu above one another. I'll start with Aokiji first. When we first get introduced to Aokiji, he was stated to be the greatest navy power by the 5 elders. This is further supported by various translations of the statement, where one of the 5 elders say that Aokiji himself is the strongest man in the navy. Even when using the raw translations, it says, after all, he's the strongest man at Marine Corps headquarters. This statement can even be further supported because Nico Robbins says how Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu are the Navy's ultimate military force. This means that although at the time these 3 were relative to each other in terms of strength, in the eyes of the Gorosei or the 5 elders, they believe that Aokiji is the strongest out of both of them. So nobody can use the excuse of, oh, maybe Kizaru and Akainu weren't thought of this early on in the series, but as I've shown, that isn't true. And another thing to note is that the 5 elders should know much more about the Marines than Robin does, so she is an unreliable source of information compared to the 5 elders themselves, who say that the Navy is just the outward face of the government. And lastly, their fight. In almost any translation of Aokiji's and Akainu's duel, it has been stated that these two are completely even with each other, so much so that they literally fought for 10 days straight with no clear winner. That is until Akainu managed to get the final blow on Aokiji, which allowed him to win. So if you want to use this line of scaling for Aokiji, he can in fact be the strongest admiral during the pre-time skip due to the abundance of statements and even during his actual fight with Akainu was just shown to stalemate him with no clear victor until the end. Aokiji also had the disadvantage during his fight with Akainu because Akainu's Devil Fruit was stated to be the strongest offensive Devil Fruit within the entire series, and Punk Hazard also has a volcano on it, which could further boost Akainu as well. So with all of this said, if you want to say that Aokiji is over Akainu, there you have it. Now that I've talked about Aokiji, let's get into Akainu and how he can be stronger than Aokiji. As I just mentioned previously, Akainu was stated to have the strongest offensive Devil Fruit. This can put its attack potency over many powerful offensive Devil Fruits like Whitebeard's Quake Fruit, Blackbeard's Darkness Fruit, and Nail's Lightning Fruit, etc. Some people may disagree and say that Akainu does not have the strongest offensive Devil Fruit, and say that Whitebeard is stronger because he was stated to be able to destroy the world with his fruit. Here's the problem though. The feats we have seen Whitebeard do with his fruit are impressive, but in terms of what he has done to people with it, isn't that great, and I'll explain why. We've seen Whitebeard use his Devil Fruit during Marineford, and when he has used it against other people, it doesn't really seem to be all that great compared to the collateral damage he causes to an area. Let's use Akainu for example. He was hitting this man a lot with his quakes, and I do mean a lot. And Akainu kept getting back up and was walking off pretty much all of his attacks. And even when Whitebeard was enraged and hit Akainu with his quake with all of the strength that he still had left, even after Whitebeard had died, Akainu still got back up and was still fighting all the way until Shanks showed up. Keep in mind Akainu had fractured bones and ribs and was still fighting. And the same with Blackbeard. He caused a ton of collateral damage when he was fighting Sengoku, but Sengoku seemed fine and was pretty much unaffected by the attacks. Now let's compare Akainu's usage of his Devil Fruit to Whitebeard's. He blew a hole through Ace that killed him. He burned half of Whitebeard's face with a normal magma attack. He seriously burned both Jinbei and Luffy so much that along with the many other injuries Luffy received, he had to be treated immediately, and even then it was still unclear if he would survive or not. Things like this show that yes, Akainu does in fact have the strongest offensive Devil Fruit. His Devil Fruit has the strongest attack potency, while Whitebeard's, or now in this case Blackbeard's Devil Fruit, has the highest destructive capacity. If for those that don't know the difference between the two, Whitebeard's Devil Fruit causes a lot of destructive capacity, like for example, he almost destroyed Marineford with it, while Akainu's Devil Fruit has stronger attack potency. He can cause more damage to a single target or to whatever he's focusing his attack on. Something like that. Anyways, aside from this, Akainu was going toe-to-toe with Whitebeard himself, tanking pretty much all of his attacks, and even fighting against Whitebeard's crew and getting past them with no effort. He burned Whitebeard while he was having his heart attack, and even after he finished his attack, Whitebeard had a gaping hole where Akainu had just hit him. In his fight with Aokiji, he had the advantage and was battling him for 10 days straight, and even when both were seemingly at their limit, he was still able to land the finishing blow and defeat him. Akainu was also stated by Oda himself that if he were to be the protagonist instead of Luffy, he would be able to find the One Piece within a year. This means Akainu would fight against all of Luffy's opponents that he's ever faced up until this point, and possibly even his future opponents, and he could possibly beat them with minimal difficulty. Akainu was also stated to have helped make the Marines more powerful, with him as Fleet Admiral than previously. And with Rayleigh's statement about how Haki gets stronger during a heated battle, Akainu is most definitely stronger now than he was previously. Blackbeard also ran away from Akainu and said how he isn't looking to fight him just yet. And keep in mind, during this time, Blackbeard not only had two Devil Fruits that he could use, the Darkness and the Quake Fruit, he was also stated in the data book during this time to be the world's strongest pirate. This being further elaborated on with the Viver cards asking if anyone is capable of getting in his way. And another thing to note is that both Aokiji and Akainu both have Future Sight, while Kizaru does not. So with all this evidence, here I'll reiterate. This part of the rankings can either be pre-timeskip Kizaru at number 11, pre-timeskip Akainu at number 10, and pre-timeskip Aokiji at number 9. Or you can say pre-timeskip Kizaru at number 11, pre-timeskip Aokiji at number 10, and pre-timeskip Akainu at number 9. I'll leave this section for you all to talk about your thoughts and comments down below. And anyways, let's go on to number 8. At number 8, I have Fujitora. Now, some people might be surprised as to why I have Fujitora over Green Bull, but Fujitora is weird because he has feats, but they're not so great. and these not so great feats really hinders his actual growth and power, especially considering he has a pretty powerful devil fruit. Firstly, his fight with Sabo, Fujitora was holding himself back an immense deal, so much so that a fellow Marine officer literally told Fujitora, like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, man, you shouldn't have had any trouble with that guy. Like, you're an admiral, and you losing to someone like that would be absurd. He pretty much is, because Sabo during his time was not admiral level at all. This is one of Fujitora's main feats that genuinely holds me back from placing him higher. Next up is his fight with Law with Doflamingo. And this isn't even really a fight with him in it. Majority of the fight was off screen, and even when it showed up, a part of the fight again with Fujitora was nowhere to be found. And he only showed back up when the fight ended. We don't know why he left the fight or what happened with him at all. All we know is that he left the fight and it was pretty much Law versus Doflamingo. So already Fujitora has two pieces of possible scaling that isn't really good to use at all. Next up, we have Fujitora and Green Bull at the Reverie versus some of the revolutionary commanders. Because they were fighting at Mary Joa, they were even more nerfed than if they were to fight at a place like Marineford. So we have a heavily nerfed Fujitora with Green Bull fighting against the revolutionary commanders with Sabo, and they were able to grab Kuma and escape. Although the Reverie was happening as well during this time, this should show how nerfed they were, since the commanders were able to grab Kuma and escape with unknown difficulty. This is all of Fujitora's main lines of scaling, and it is not that good at all. Yes, he's an admiral, but because he hasn't really shown much impressive feats, I find it hard to believe he is stronger than Green Bull. The only reason I have Fujitora above the pre-time skip admirals is because, one, it was stated that with the Navy under Akainu's leadership, they became the strongest that they've ever been, and are the supreme or main force within the New World, which should mean that either they must have trained harder than ever, or Akainu stomped out the weak and left the strong ones to be there. But because of this, along with Doflamingo and different translations calling both Fujitora and Green Bull monsters, this should help put them over the pre-time skip admirals in terms of statements. Next at number 7 is Green Bull. I've already explained a little bit of why Fujitora, in my opinion, is weaker than Green Bull, but to add on for why Green Bull is stronger, he fought against King, few other members of the Beast Pirates, and beat them all without much difficulty. Some people try and say that they were super nerfed and weakened, but they really weren't at all. For those that don't know, Green Bull doesn't fight against them until a full week later, 7 days later, after Luffy beats Kaido. So the Beast Pirates had a full week of rest, and even then they still weren't able to beat him. The last thing he did was also resist Shanks' Conqueror's Haki, and he didn't pass out or was unaffected or unable to move. Although yes, he did end up leaving Wano and was shocked that he could feel and sense Shanks' Haki from all the way to where he was. The fact that he was able to resist his Haki and pretty much still be conscious and speaking should show how he is insanely strong, especially considering that Shanks' Conqueror's Haki should be the strongest in the series that we've seen up to this point. Now at number 6, we have post-time skip Kizaru. The reason I have post-time skip Kizaru above Green Bull is because of how much Akainu trusts him. Not only does Akainu view Kizaru as a close friend and a confidant, he trusts Kizaru with a lot more missions than he does with Green Bull and Fujitora, and Kizaru himself says that he can go to Wano if he wants to and deal with Big Mom and Kaido by himself, who were both stated to be no weaker than the Admirals. Combine this with the fact that Kizaru is much faster, along with the fact that he also did get stronger during the time skip, I think it's safe to say that Kizaru should still be the strongest Admiral currently out of the 3. Now at number 5, I have Fleet Admiral Akainu, or post-time skip Akainu here. It really shouldn't be a surprise as to why I have Fleet Admiral Akainu over all the people I've mentioned previously, and I also went over a majority of the evidence of why pre-time skip Akainu was over Kizaru and Aokiji. The only thing I'll add on here is that with the help of Fleet Admiral Akainu, and the Marines reigned supreme in the New World, and Akainu was also stated by Oda, as I said previously, to be able to find the One Piece within a year, meaning he is stronger than all of Luffy's opponents so far. Now at number 4 and 3, I have pre-time skip Garp and pre-time skip Sengoku. Now if you want to argue that Garp is above Sengoku, Garp was stated in the data book to be able to one-shot any active pirate in the New World. This is supported as when he blitzed and one-shotted Marco. Even in his old age, he was stated to still be the hero of the Marines, and even though he constantly refuses promotion to an admiral, the Marines still keep him around because of his strength and reputation. Garp and Sengoku are also said to be rivals, even still currently within the story. During Marineford, Garp also implies that he is the strongest admiral present, and while talking to Sengoku, he says that if he wanted to stop Ace's execution, he would have already done it. And later, when Akainu kills Ace, Sengoku holds Garp down, and Garp states that if he doesn't continue to hold him down, he will kill Akainu. And now for pre-time skip Sengoku. Sengoku during the pre-time skip was the fleet admiral of the Marines. The fleet admiral has been said multiple times to be stronger than the admirals. And even during Marineford, Sengoku was able to hold down Garp, the same Garp who, as I said before, overpowered, blitzed, and one-shotted Marco, who was keeping up with the admirals. Sengoku was also able to battle against Blackbeard after he got Whitebeard's Quake Fruit, and Blackbeard was doing the exact same Quake attacks that Whitebeard was doing, and would have eventually leveled Marineford had Shanks not intervened. And lastly, for number 2 and 1, I have Prime Garp and Prime Sengoku. And again, with these two, you can pretty much have them as interchangeable. If you want to put Prime Garp over Sengoku, Garp was stated to have cornered and fought against Roger and his crew numerous times, even before Roger got his illness. Garp also implies again that he is stronger than Sengoku. This Sengoku was an admiral during the time as well too. Garp alongside Sengoku was able to defeat Shiki, someone who was considered a rival to Roger as well. Garp was regarded as one of the only 2 Marines by Roger to be fun. Prime Garp also got his title of Hero of the Marines by being the last Marine standing during God Valley, and fought alongside Roger against Rox and his crew. Rox, who was considered to be Roger's greatest rival, and his crew consisted of a young Kaido, a young Big Mom, a young Shiki, and a young Whitebeard. Prime Garp was also able to smash Chen Zhao's head, whose head was stated to be the hardest thing in the verse during that time. Garp also says that his training he did to smash his head was smashing 8 mountains, and it is also implied that Prime Whitebeard was scared of the Marines during this time, more likely scared of Garp and Sengoku since they were the strongest Marines during this time. And finally, if you want to put Prime Sengoku over Prime Garp, Sengoku and Garp was stated to be rivals. Prime Whitebeard was scared of the Marines, as I said previously. He and Garp were able to defeat Shiki, who was a rival to Roger, and Roger considered Sengoku, the other Marine officer, as one of the only 2 that were fun to battle. And that is the rankings of all the admirals I have. I'll be honest, this video took so long to make. I had to read so many One Piece chapters, find so many databook scans, and editing this was an absolute nightmare. But I do hope that with the information I provided, you did learn something new and possibly have a new perspective on ranking the admirals. Please remember that this ranking is my ranking and it is not objective. This is just my opinion. Thank you all for watching the video. Please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment to let me know your thoughts and opinions. And with all that out of the way, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.